10 years ago, Genesis was just another model in the Hyundai lineup. But now, in 2023, they are knocking at the door of the established luxury brands. Their flagship, the G90, has been updated for this model year, and it wants to take on the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the BMW 7 Series, and the Audi S8 head-on. So is this new car good enough to make you think about buying this one instead of the German rivals? Let's go for a drive and find out. Unlike some of the German rivals, the Genesis G90 does not have multiple engine options. The V8 is long gone. Instead, it only has one engine, and it is a 3.5-liter twin-turbocharged V6, but it does have a little bit of help from a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Here in Canada, this is the only variation of this engine that you can get. In the United States, you can get it with or without the 48-volt mild hybrid system. The total output of this powertrain is 409 horsepower and 405 pound-feet of torque, and that is with the mild hybrid. Obviously, compared to the Mercedes-Benz S580, that is quite a bit less power because the S580 has a bi-turbo V8. So this G90 is more comparable to the S500 and its inline-six engine. In terms of acceleration, this G90 is pretty quick despite its weight and massive size. The engine has plenty of grunt down low in the RPM, so as soon as you touch the accelerator pedal, the car gets away from a stop without any fuss. This car does have a sport mode, although I'm not sure why, because there's nothing sporty about it. This is primarily focused to be comfortable and smooth, and it does that very well. But in sport mode, the throttle response is sharper, it holds the gears for a little bit longer before upshifting, and the adaptive dampers are a little bit firmer, but it's still a really comfortable ride. More on that later. Other drive modes include Eco, Comfort, Smart, and Chauffeur. In that last mode, it changes all of the parameters that it can to provide the smoothest and softest and most comfortable ride for the VIPs in the back. With the mild hybrid assist, the 2023 G90 is rated for 13.6 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 9.6 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. During my time with the big sedan, I averaged 13 liters per 100 kilometers. On highways, I found it quite easy to get better than the claimed fuel economy figure. In eco mode, the mild hybrid system allows the car to coast when you lift your foot off the throttle pedal. It will keep the engine running, but it will seamlessly put the transmission into neutral so that there isn't any engine braking. At least I think that's what it's doing. I'm not an engineer, but it definitely feels that way. This allows the car to travel for a few extra meters with very little loss of speed. The mild hybrid system also shuts off the engine a bit before arriving at a complete stop, further saving a few drops of fuel. Speaking of the transmission, the V6 engine is paired with an 8-speed auto. The shifts between gears are imperceivable and extremely smooth, exactly what you'd want from a luxury flagship sedan. However, the programming of this transmission doesn't allow for the most responsive shifts, even in sport mode. There is a slight delay when using the paddle shifters, and as well when you just put your foot down on the throttle pedal. But as I said earlier, this is not a sporty car, so I would be perfectly fine to trade fast shifts for smooth shifts. If you find yourself on a twisty mountain road, do not expect this Genesis G90 to be quite as nice to drive as some of the German rivals. If you do want a more engaging driving big luxury sedan, then probably take a look at the Audi S8 or the new BMW 7 Series. As I said earlier, this Genesis G90 focuses primarily on comfort. So there is quite a bit of body roll through the corners, the steering is on the light side, and it just doesn't really feel like a sporty luxury sedan. Which, again, totally fine for a car like this. You get the impression that this car feels more at home on highways, and it genuinely does feel really nice to drive when you're cruising on a freeway or a highway. There are only two things that bother me about the driving dynamics of this Genesis G90, although you can get used to them. Firstly are the brakes, which are brake-by-wire in this G90. It's starting to become the norm these days. Brake-by-wire better integrates the adaptive cruise control and the automatic emergency braking with the brake pedal itself. However, sometimes the end result can be a lacking of feel in the brake pedal, and you do notice that with this G90. For the first maybe 5 or 10% of brake pedal travel, when you first apply the brake, you do slow down, but unfortunately the brake pedal doesn't really provide that much resistance to your foot. It's only when you press harder do you start to feel the firm brake pedal. I noticed the same thing in the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. However, in this G90, it doesn't feel quite as bad as it did in the S-Class. The other thing that takes some getting used to in this Genesis G90 is the rear wheel steering. At slow speeds, the back wheels turn in the opposite direction to the front wheels by about 4 degrees, if I remember correctly, and that just makes it easier to maneuver around a tight parking spot. At higher speeds, the back wheels turn in the same direction as the front wheels by, I think, 2 or 2.5 degrees, and that improves stability, especially when you're changing lanes. However, at slow speeds, it just feels like as though the back wants to overtake the front, almost like as though it wants to drift. Obviously, you won't be doing that because you're going at really slow speeds, but you just get that feeling. Maybe it has something to do with the fast steering or the way that the back wheels are tuned to start providing turning. I don't know, but it just feels a little bit off in this Genesis G90. The other cars that I've previously driven that have rear wheel steering included the Mercedes-Benz S-Class and more recently the Range Rover First Edition. In those two, it didn't feel quite as odd as this one does. So again, it just takes some getting used to in this Genesis G90. Like many other ultra-luxury cars, the Genesis G90 has 4-corner air suspension and adaptive dampers. Thanks to this setup, the ride is fabulous. I would even go so far as to say that it is as good as the ride that you get in the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Cracks in the road, potholes, big bumps, even speed bumps are really well absorbed by the suspension. Additionally, the car does scan ahead, and if it does notice a bump in the road, it will immediately soften up the suspension to prevent that shunt from getting transferred into the cabin. It is an amazing suspension system, and the ride is superb. Additionally, it's really quiet in this cabin. Engine noise is a whisper, unless you put your foot down, obviously, but when you're just cruising around town or on the highways, you never hear it. Wind and road noise, very well subdued. The car has microphones throughout the cabin to pick up any unwanted noises, primarily from the tires, and it will play back the canceling sound waves through the stereo system to, again, try and cancel out these noises to make them not as obtrusive in the cabin. And also with the 48-volt mild hybrid system, the auto start-stop system is really smooth. The Genesis G90 is only available in one wheelbase configuration. It is essentially a long wheelbase. This means that both front and rear occupants will have plenty of legroom. I'm 6'4" and I never felt as though my legs were being squished or cramped whether I was sitting in the front or in the back behind my driving position. Headroom is equally good across both rows of seats. Behind the seats, the trunk is on the small size compared to the Mercedes S-Class or the BMW 7 Series. The G90 only has 300 liters of space. The non-hybrid variant has an additional 40 liters or about 1.5 cubic feet of extra space. There is also a pass-through in the middle for longer items such as skis. In the past, you would have considered a Genesis because it was significantly less expensive than other comparable cars. However, with this new generation G90, it got quite a bit more expensive. Here in Canada, it is only available in one trim and it'll cost you $115,000 Canadian. But at least for that price, it is fully loaded and it is still less expensive than a similarly equipped S-Class or 7 Series. As for gadgets for all that money, it has the usual luxury features such as leather upholstery, heated and ventilated seats all around, a dual-pane sunroof, surround view cameras, 3-zone automatic climate control, and so on. But what about the more unique gadgets of the Genesis G90? Well, starting with the doors first, it has pop-out door handles. They work great, they look great, and they pop back in as soon as you start driving. However, if the temperatures dip below zero, like how they are right now, they can freeze. This isn't just unique to the Genesis G90, I have noticed this in the Mercedes-Benz S-Class as well, so you could have a hard time getting into the car. But once you do get into the car and let's say you have some loose change that you want to keep away from prying eyes, you have a little compartment right here in the armrest. Unfortunately, the G90 does not have heated armrests on the door panel or on the center console like how other luxury vehicles have. But one big party trick that this G90 does have are the power closing doors. You can also close the doors with buttons right here on the center console. When it comes to opening the doors, they only open this much. They don't open all the way. And it makes sense because if you park next to a car, then you don't want it to open all the way. Otherwise, you're going to be hitting the car that you're parked next to. Unique gadgets in the front of the Genesis G90 include a fragrance system, which I guess is becoming the norm for these luxury vehicles, and you have two different scents to choose from. You can change between the two scents through the infotainment system, but you can change the intensity of each fragrance through the climate control touchscreen. I'm still not a big fan of these touchscreen controls for the climate, but at least in the Genesis G90 you do have some physical buttons, so you can just set it to auto and just change the temperature with this toggle switch. This car also has a 23-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system, and to my untrained ears, it sounds really good. I'm not a big connoisseur of car sound systems, so again, I don't really know them all that well, but even I can tell that this is a really good system. Plus, the two speakers on the top of the dashboard rise up like a certain male appendage when it gets excited. The seats in the front are massaging, and they do have 3 or 4 massage programs to choose from, but you don't get quite as many as you get in the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, for example, or other luxury vehicles. However, the massaging function is really good in this car. And finally, one other unique gadget includes the Highway Drive Assist 2. This is a semi-hands-free driving aid on certain freeways and highways. The car will notify the driver to put their hands back on the steering wheel after a few minutes, so do not expect this to be similar to GM's Super Cruise system. But you don't have to hold on firmly to the steering wheel. Just lightly touching it is enough. As well, HDA2 is smart enough to change lanes on its own, though you do need to keep at least one hand on the steering wheel for the maneuver to perform. In the back, of course, there are a few gadgets for you to play around with. So at the very top, you have a little vanity mirror so you can check your hair, check your makeup, whatever it may be. You also have your own separate moonroof, although it doesn't open like the one in the front. However, it does have a shade and you can control through the touchscreen right here on the center console. You also have power sunshades for either side and also a sunshade in the back, or peasant blockers, as some other people like to call them. Quite noisy though. The outer seats are power operated, they are heated, ventilated, and they're not massaging, which is a little weird. At least that's what I found out for the Canadian spec G90. I've looked through Genesis Canada's website, I've looked through their press materials, and even right here on the door where there should be a massaging button or in the infotainment screen on the center console, I couldn't find any mention of massaging back seats. Again, for the Canadian spec. For the American spec, you guys do have massaging rear seats. I don't know why there's this discrepancy between the two. It feels like we're getting screwed over, but yeah, it just doesn't make sense in a luxury car like this. If I'm wrong, please let me know. And if somebody from Genesis Canada is watching, please comment down below. Why doesn't the Canadian spec G90 have massaging back seats? However, these seats are power operated and you can control the bottom, the reclining, you can control the headrest and the little footrest that's down here. Plus, you can move the front seats all the way forward and then have this one recline back so that you feel much more relaxed. It takes a while for that one to move forward, but it does move all the way to the front. But once it's there, there is tons of space in this seating position. And you can raise your little footrest at the bottom as well. I know the camera may not be able to see it, but it's there. So yeah, very relaxing place to be in. A couple more little unique gadgets in the back include warm or cool reading lights and a little compartment in the center armrest that will disinfect any small items that you place in there using UV lights. As for the materials and looks, the Genesis is on par with the German rivals. The leather is soft, the forged carbon trim looks phenomenal, the ambient lighting is subtle but eye-catching, and the microfiber headliner looks and feels premium. The exterior design gives the G90 a presence on the roads that I would argue to say the S-Class lost. The G90 is a big sedan and it looks like a luxury car even if you don't know anything about the Genesis brand. I noticed a lot of people taking long looks at this car in amazement. I even had a chat with an owner of an older generation BMW 7 Series about the G90 and he was impressed by the quality and look of this car. And finally, the 2023 Genesis G90 is equipped with every safety feature that is available from the Genesis brand. Additionally, the G90 received a Top Safety Pick Plus from the IIHS, with good ratings for crash tests and superior ratings for the advanced driver and safety aids. So although the Genesis G90 is now a six-figure car, you can still look at this from certain perspectives as a budget-friendly luxury vehicle. Compared to a similarly equipped Mercedes-Benz S500, this is still far less expensive. And in the long run, this will probably cost you less in maintenance than the German cars. Sure, it doesn't drive quite as well as some of its rivals, but where it matters most, which is comfort and smoothness, this is on par with them. The ride is superb, the cabin is really quiet, and the materials are very nice. So if the prestige of a BMW badge or a Mercedes-Benz badge doesn't really mean that much to you and all you care about is comfort and smoothness, then this Genesis G90 should be at the top of your list. If you'd like to know more about this 2023 Genesis G90, I wrote a more detailed review of it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up here. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck, or most likely, it'll probably be an SUV next time. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one.